In 1971, Schwinn sold 1 out of every 4 bicycles in America. They employed 1,800 workers at a single factory in Chicago. They had 2,000 authorized dealers. Their name was as American as Coca-Cola. 21 years later, they filed for bankruptcy, $75 million in debt, losing $1 million every single month. But Schwinn did not die because the market changed. They did not die because people stopped riding bikes. Schwinn died because the family that owned it made one decision so catastrophic, so irreversible, that business schools still teach it as a warning. They took their factory blueprints, their engineering secrets, their manufacturing tools, and they handed them to a foreign competitor. Then they watched that competitor become a $2.3 billion empire while Schwinn collapsed into nothing. This is the story of how an American dynasty committed industrial suicide. To understand how completely Schwinn dominated American life, you need to go back to the 1950s and 60s. If you were a kid in America, getting a Schwinn for Christmas was the equivalent of getting the keys to freedom. It was the first thing you ever owned that could take you somewhere. The Black Phantom, a 67-pound chrome cruiser with a built-in headlight and a spring fork, was the most coveted bicycle of the 1950s. Then in 1963, a Schwinn designer named Al Fritz got a tip from a sales manager in California. Kids on the West Coast were ripping apart their bikes and bolting on banana seats and high handlebars. Upper management laughed at the prototype Fritz built. They thought it looked ridiculous. Then 45,000 units sold in the first few months. They called it the Sting-Ray, and it became such a cultural phenomenon that almost 2 million sold in the first 5 years. A Sting-Ray now sits in the Smithsonian. The 1955 Schwinn catalog featured Bob Hope, Ronald Reagan, and Humphrey Bogart. Captain Kangaroo advertised Schwinn on television starting in 1958. By 1974, Schwinn hit peak production, 1.5 million bicycles in a single year. Your father rode a Schwinn. You rode a Schwinn. Your kids rode a Schwinn. They were not just a brand, they were an institution. They were untouchable. But here is the thing about dynasties. They rot from the inside. And the Schwinn family was already 4 generations deep. Ignaz Schwinn arrived in Chicago from Germany in 1891 with nothing but mechanical training and ambition. By 1895, he founded Arnold, Schwinn and Company with 60 workers. By 1914, he built it into the largest bicycle manufacturer on Earth, controlling more than a quarter of all bicycles produced in the United States. Ignaz knew every worker by name. He had no superintendent. He handled every detail himself. When his son Frank took over in 1931, the company only got stronger. Frank patented the cantilever frame. He built the electro-forged welding process that made Schwinn frames nearly indestructible. He created a dealer network based on the discovery that 27% of retailers accounted for 94% of sales. The factory at 1718 North Kildare Avenue in Chicago became the beating heart of American cycling. It produced almost everything in a Schwinn bicycle except the steel tubing. But statistics on family businesses are brutal. Only 3% survived to the 4th generation. Frank's eldest son, Edward Sr., was being groomed to lead the company, but he died of leukemia at age 48 in 1972. His younger brother, Frank V, took over, but was a hands-off manager more comfortable with finance than with factory floors. Under his watch, the Kildare Avenue plant aged without investment. Wooden floors rotted, the roof leaked. One dealer who toured in the 70s said it looked like a factory from right after World War II, and that was the good part they were showing visitors. Frank V retired around 1979, passing the presidency to his nephew, Edward Schwinn Jr., the great-grandson of Ignaz. Ed Jr. owned just 3.4% of the company. 16 family members held shares through a trust established back in the 1920s, collecting up to $1.2 million in dividends per year. Ed replaced seasoned veterans with young financial analysts. He pushed out Al Fritz, the man who invented the Stingray. He hired a 25-year-old brother-in-law. One Japanese industry leader privately described Ed as a nice fellow who had a lower degree of interest for the business. And this is the man who would destroy everything his great-grandfather built. But the killing blow did not come from bad management alone. It came from 2 revolutions that Schwinn refused to see coming. Here is where the story turns from decline into self-destruction. In the mid-1970s, BMX exploded in America. Sales surged from 140,000 bikes in 1974 to 1.75 million by 1977. Frank V dismissed BMX as a dangerous sport. Schwinn finally produced the Scrambler in 1975, but it was too heavy and too late. They captured only 7 to 8% of the BMX market, while brands like Mongoose and Diamondback seized the moment. The founder of Mongoose captured the disconnect perfectly when he said the people in Chicago only heard the echo of trends emerging from the West Coast. The mountain bike miss was even worse. In the late 70s, riders in Marin County, California were inventing an entirely new kind of bicycle on fire roads, often using old Schwinn cruisers as starting platforms. In 1981, a company called Specialized introduced the Stump Jumper, the first mass-produced mountain bike, priced at $750. The first shipment of 125 bikes sold out in 6 days. By the end of the 80s, mountain bikes accounted for more than 60% of all bikes sold in America. Schwinn entered the market approximately 7 years too late. Gary Fisher, one of the founders of mountain biking, recalled showing his bike to Schwinn engineers. He said they looked at him like he was some jerk kid who did not know anything. The Schwinn engineers told him, "We know bikes, you guys are all amateurs." That arrogance cost them an entire generation of customers. But here is where it gets truly unforgivable. While Schwinn was missing every trend, Ed Jr. made a decision that would hand the company's competitive advantage directly to its future competitors. In September 1980, 1,400 workers walked off the job at the Chicago factory, the first strike in the company's 85-year history. Workers wanted a pension plan. The strike lasted 13 weeks. When it ended, management called back only 65% of the workforce. To fill the production gap, Ed turned to a small Taiwanese company called Giant Manufacturing, founded by a former eel farmer named King Liu. Giant delivered an additional 80,000 bicycles in roughly 5 months during the strike. Ed was impressed. After closing the Chicago factory in 1982 and 83, he accelerated the relationship dramatically, and this is the part that still stuns people who study manufacturing. He sent equipment and engineers to Taiwan. He transferred frame design expertise, manufacturing dies, tooling, engineering specifications, modern welding processes, quality control standards, paint techniques, and complete assembly methods. A professor at Brandeis University later explained the dynamic plainly. For subcontracting to work, American firms must disclose all technical information to their foreign manufacturers. The transfer was total. By 1984, Giant produced 500,000 bicycles for Schwinn, 2/3 of its total sales. By 1986, 80% of Schwinn's production was outsourced to Giant, while Schwinn represented 75% of Giant's revenue. It was a relationship built on mutual dependency, but only one side was learning. Giant's president Tony Lowe did not hide from the truth. He said, "Without Schwinn, we never would have grown to where we are today. We learned many basic things from them: quality, value, service." When Ed visited Giant's expanded plant and 6-story office building in 1985, he turned to his marketing VP and said with bitter recognition, "Look what we built for Giant." But instead of learning from that mistake, Ed repeated it. Resentful of Giant's growing independence, he turned to a Hong Kong entrepreneur running China Bicycles Company in Shenzhen. Schwinn purchased a 1/3 stake, the same playbook repeated. Blueprints, equipment, and process knowledge flowed to China. Ed Schwinn had now given away the family's manufacturing DNA twice to 2 different countries, building 2 separate competitors with his own great-grandfather's knowledge. On October 7, 1992, Schwinn filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy. They carried $117 million in assets against $82 million in liabilities. They were hemorrhaging cash at a rate that could not be sustained. Suppliers were demanding cash on delivery. The banks were squeezing harder every week. The Greenville, Mississippi factory that Ed had opened in 1981 to replace Chicago had never made a profit in 10 years, accumulating over $30 million in losses. The location was 75 miles from the nearest interstate and 60 miles from the nearest railroad station. Management joked it was easier to get to Taiwan than to Greenville. One dealer described the quality coming out of that plant by saying you found yourself repairing the bikes as you were assembling them. Richard Schwinn, who had tried to salvage the Greenville operation, said on the last day, "We tried. We tried awful hard for many, many years." The Kildare Avenue factory in Chicago, vacant since 1983, had been largely destroyed by suspected arson in August of 1984. It sat as a lot of weeds and broken glass for 2 decades before becoming a high school. The Schwinn family, all 14 heirs, split just $2.5 million. Think about that. Nearly a century of American manufacturing heritage, and the family walked away with less than the price of a house in Chicago. Meanwhile, Giant Manufacturing, the company that received Schwinn's technology transfer, used that knowledge to introduce the world's first mass-produced carbon fiber bicycle frame in 1987, just 6 years after receiving Schwinn's secrets. Giant formed a U.S. subsidiary led by Bill Austin, Schwinn's own former vice president of marketing. Today, Giant generates approximately $2.3 billion in annual revenue and ranks among the world's largest bicycle manufacturers. While Schwinn was destroying itself, 3 companies built the future of American cycling. Trek, founded in 1976 in a red barn in Waterloo, Wisconsin, with just 5 employees, committed to innovation from day one. They introduced carbon fiber frames, acquired Gary Fisher's mountain bike company in '93, and grew from $16 million in revenue in 1986 to nearly $2 billion today. Specialized built its entire identity around the mountain bike revolution that Schwinn ignored. Their motto was "Innovate or Die," which was the anti-Schwinn philosophy in 4 words. Cannondale pioneered mass-produced aluminum frames and pointedly maintained American manufacturing in Bedford, Pennsylvania, while Schwinn was shipping jobs overseas. All 3 did exactly what Schwinn refused to do. They invested in research, stayed close to cycling culture, and respected their dealer networks. The brand name Schwinn still exists. It was bought out of bankruptcy by investor Sam Zell in 1993. It went bankrupt again in 2001. Then Pacific Cycle bought it and moved it into Walmart. Durrell Industries acquired it in 2004. In 2022, Dutch conglomerate Pon Holdings bought the entire portfolio for $810 million. Today, you can buy a Schwinn at Walmart for $150 to $550. It is manufactured entirely in China and Taiwan. The brand still has 88% market awareness, but a $100 bike on a department store shelf bears no resemblance to the bikes that rolled off the Kildare Avenue line. And here is the final twist that makes this story almost too painful to believe. The Chinese and Taiwanese factories producing today's Schwinn bicycles are the direct descendants of the manufacturers that Schwinn equipped with its own dies, plans, and engineering expertise in the 1980s. Schwinn literally built the factories that now make its own cheap replacements. The Schwinn story is not just about one family's failure. It is a compressed history of what happens when an American company stops building and starts outsourcing, when it stops innovating and starts coasting on a name, when it hands its competitive advantage to a foreign partner and assumes that partner will always remain subordinate. Ed Schwinn did not just fail to adapt. He actively transferred the tools his great-grandfather spent a lifetime building, and then he watched helplessly as those tools were used to bury him. 1,800 workers in Chicago, 240 workers in Mississippi, 2,000 dealers who believed in the brand. They all paid the price for decisions made by a man who owned 3.4% of the company he destroyed. The next time you see a Schwinn at Walmart, remember what it used to be, and remember what it cost. If this story made you think differently about American manufacturing, hit subscribe. We have more investigations coming that you will not want to miss.